So hello everyone, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started now, so hopefully everyone is able to see my screen and hear me. So if you have any technical issues, please use the chat function and we'll be able to address those. If you have any questions regarding PlantPredict or the software, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section as we go along with the demo. We will try to answer as many questions as possible at the end. And again, if your question is not answered, we will make sure to compile it and answer them at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to pull up my PlantPredict screen. Please feel free to do so on your own computers. So when you log into PlantPredict, you'll see your project homepage, your project library here. So if you're not familiar with PlantPredict, you'll see the libraries are on the left side here. It defaults to the project library. We also have our weather library, inverters, modules, our resource library where we store things like independent engineering reports. And this is your prediction queue right here. Also on the left-hand bar, if you're the account administrator, you'll see the Manage Accounts tab. You can sign out here and also toggle between metric and imperial, which I will demonstrate later. So here in the project library, they're organized by date, so it's organized by the project that you created most recently. You can also organize them via map. So if you go to the map view, you can see all the projects that you've run around the world. One cool feature about PlantPredict, because it is a web-based modeling platform, and if you have other people within your company that are using PlantPredict, you can actually uncheck this filter here and see the other projects being run by people in your company around the world. So let's say my coworker Martin ran a prediction in Cairo. I want to go here and look at this prediction. He's on vacation. I don't need him to send me any files or anything like that. I can just jump into his Cairo prediction and clone this prediction and start running my own projects. So for this version 5 training, the goal is to show some of the newer advanced features, such as the map builder, slope shading, and batch processing. Also throughout the webinar, we're going to go through and try to cover some of the best practices and tips and tricks for using PlantPredict. So the goal of PlantPredict is to make utility scale PV modeling as easy and intuitive and also as accurate as possible. So we're going to just jump straight in. So this is the example I've made for Imperial Valley, California, where there are many solar projects. I have a bunch of examples you'll see here. In your prediction, this is your prediction library, so each project has predictions that are associated with it. Each project is attached to one lat long. So over here, you'll see your geographic features for your project, lat long, elevation, time zone, city, etc. So I'm going to start with a map prediction. So what you do is, if you want to create a new prediction, you can hit Start New Prediction here. So these are the three options you'll see here. When PlantPredict was first released, we just had the block-by-block builder. This basically is a simple plant builder which allows you to design based on your inverters and your arrays, your DC fields. Then we launched the map builder, which basically enabled you to understand your site capacity on a really high level and then run an energy prediction based off that. The most recent is the batch simulations option, which enables you to run 350 iterations of a plant, changing variables like DC-AC ratio, row spacing, azimuth, tilt angle, all with one click. So we're going to start off with the map builder, for those of you that may be less familiar with this new feature. So I'll click map, I'll click build on a map, and I'll type in my prediction name, and then I'll start here. So once you go into the prediction, this is what we call our TurboTax screen because it has all the different key components broken down. So we have broken it down into environmental conditions, the power plant builder, and your simulation settings. You can do them in any order. We're going to start with the blocks and arrays. Hopefully, this is going to be a little bit more fun than doing your taxes. So if you go to the map builder and you go to blocks and arrays, you'll jump straight into this map view, which is a little bit different from your block view. So what you'll see on the left is your high-level plant parameters, and on the right side, you'll see your locality where your prediction is stored. So this uses Google Maps. You can toggle between the satellite view and the terrain map view. So I'm going to go to the satellite view. You can draw on the map using this polygon here. You can create site boundaries. You can also upload a KMZ. So since I came prepared, I'm going to go in and upload the KMZ from my Imperial Valley Imaginary Solar Project. And now I have my site boundaries on the map. And then next, what you do is select your inverter. So we're going to do that. I'll just pick a simple one here. And then we'll go to the module. I will pick a First Solar one because I'm a little bit biased. And then next, you put in your DC and your ratio and other high-level plant parameters so you know what your plant's going to look like. So since I've done this before, I have a feeling it's going to be around 75 megawatts DC with a 40% ground coverage ratio. When I put in my ground coverage ratio, this auto populates my row spacing. Also, if I change my row spacing, this changes my GCR. So this field here is reverse compatible. I also put in a setback, so a little boundary from the edge of the perimeter of the KMZ. Let's say I want my setback in feet and not meters. I can quickly toggle to Imperial and say I want 50-foot setback, and then I can very easily do that, and the site will update accordingly. We have some advanced options here as well. This basically just tells you what your building block is for your table. So this is saying I have a 2-module high, 5-module wide for Solar Series 6 table. Let's say, and I also want to put my DC-AC ratio. Let's say I'm shooting for a 1.25. We're going to put Series 6 in portrait, and we're going to choose the straight north-south 180-degree azimuth. Looks like I have all my plant parameters now, so I'm going to hit refresh display. What this is doing is looking at my site boundaries, looking at my site characteristics, building one inverter block, and then populating my layout based on that one inverter block. So you can see here I have a bunch of nice, neat rectangles here. It looks like I can pretty comfortably fit 75 megawatts DC in this plant. Let's say, I think I have some more room. I can change my, turn my row spacing down a little bit and see, can I get a little bit more energy out of this with the same DC? So what I'll do is I'll change my row spacing. My old DC field disappears. I'll hit refresh, and then in just a few moments, I should see what this plant looks like with a slightly high row spacing. So it looks like, obviously, it makes sense that it would take up a little bit more room, but we could still pretty comfortably fit my 60 megawatts AC and my 75 megawatts DC into my plant. So let's say I'm happy with this. I can save and close my plant, and now I'm done with the power plant builder. The next thing we'll do is go to the system. So on the blocks and arrays, this is where your DC fields and your inverters are. On the system, this is where your high voltage systems would go. So on the top left here, you'll see you can put a total system capacity. This can also be called the LGIA. So let's say your interconnect with the utility has a maximum of 60 megawatts AC. So we can put that here. So any energy, AC energy above that level will be clipped in the energy prediction. I can also put an availability loss here. I'm going to leave that 0 for now. Over here, you can put your transformers and your transmission lines. So this is something that is missing in a lot of software. A lot of solar software, you have to do post-processing to accurately model transformers and transmission lines, especially if you have multiple. With PlantPredict, we try to make it as easy as possible. You just click plus, and you add your transformers. So let's say I have a 115 kV transformer, and I have a, let's say I want to go back to kilometers. I'm going to do a 2-kilometer transmission line. And then let's say I have a 500 kV transformer after that. This is what's unique about PlantPredict. You can actually model multiple transformers relatively quickly and easily. And that's all it is. So we're going to save and close here. And you'll notice on the right side, as we start building our prediction, our summary view builds up as well. So then we'll jump back to the environmental conditions. This is where you pick your weather file and other environmental characteristics of your site. So what PlantPredict does is it compiles all the publicly downloaded and available weather files that are within a 50-mile radius of your site. So it looks like we have a bunch here. And you can scroll through and see which file tickles your fancy. I have the SolarGIS file already downloaded for the site, but let's say I didn't like that file. I wanted to add a new file. The great thing about PlantPredict is you don't have to leave the software to do that. You can do that all within this platform itself. So we have many different weather providers that we partner with that you can download straight from our service without having to leave and download. So we have the NSRDB physical solar model for North and South America. Also, MeteorNorm and SolarGIS are paid global services, and NASA is a free global service. We've negotiated an agreement with MeteorNorm and SolarGIS to give all of our new users 10 free predictions. So you get a limited free trial with both MeteorNorm and SolarGIS. After that, you have to pay for the subscription. And if you end up paying for them, you can go into your Manage Accounts tab and add your weather API key. And then you and your entire company can actually continue downloading high-quality weather data straight from PlantPredict without having to exit the software and manually upload it. Let's say you have some files that you've already got on your desktop, or you have a site-specific weather data that doesn't fit any typical format. You can actually upload your own weather file here. PlantPredict will recognize the standard formats such as TMY3 and AWS and 3-tier. And if you have a non-standard weather format, you can really simply do a weather import by delimiting which columns correspond to which variables. You can also create a weather file if you have monthly data. You can use our synthetic generator to turn that into an 8760 file. So let's say I want to use this SolarGIS file. I think this GHI is representative of this region. I'm going to click this SolarGIS file, and then I'm going to save my weather. So while this loads, you'll see I have my weather file here with my high-level weather parameters. The other environmental conditions, you'll probably be, if you've run predictions before, you'll see the albedo and soiling loss. These are pretty standard losses, and you can adjust these as you see fit for your region. We also use plant design temperature in PlantPredict. So based on the 99.6 cooling temperature, it derates your inverter based on that temperature, because all inverters are, rated at whatever 25 degrees C or 50 degrees C. But most sites don't fall into one of those two buckets. They fall somewhere in between. So PlantPredict has a bit of smart inverter rating for you where it does that. You can also put a horizon scene. Let's say you have a mountain range somewhere in the distance. You can put in your azimuth elevation angle that corresponds to that horizon scene, and PlantPredict will adjust the shading loss based on that horizon. So we're going to save and close environmental conditions, and as we do that, you'll see on the right side our summary comes up here. The last thing we'll do is the model choices. So this, as the name implies, enables you to choose different models and algorithms that you'd like to run your energy prediction on. We've defaulted it to what we view as industry standard, but we understand different companies, different regions have different standards. So you can change your company's default settings in the Manage Accounts tab. Also, if you have any questions about any of these different algorithms here, you can click this blue question mark here. And this is something that's available on most pages, which will either show a description or a help video on whatever page you're on. So if you're ever lost or confused in PlantPredict and you don't want to email us or watch a full webinar, just click this blue question mark, and that will probably tell you a little bit more about what you're looking for. So two cool features here that I'll quickly point out is the uncertainty analysis and the degradation profile. So sometimes banks or insurance companies want to see the risk profile of a power plant. So instead of just a P50 weather, they want a P90 or a P99 energy prediction. And oftentimes you're going to have to do some post-processing or pay for a weather service that gives you this level of information. With PlantPredict, we can do a statistical extrapolation based on your P50 weather. So just put in your different variability measurements here and take your p-value, and what PlantPredict will do is extrapolate and let you know what that p-value energy will be in your output. So let's say I want a p90. I'm going to save that here. Degradation, this is a really useful feature. In my experience, most financial models just use the year one AC energy of a plant and then chop off a flat % year over year. That's not technically correct, but it's very difficult to model a true degradation profile in most other softwares. It requires a lot of manual processing. With PlantPredict, you can choose a DC degradation profile, which is more indicative of what your power plant is actually doing as opposed to an AC degradation, because it's the modules that are degrading more than the AC side of the power plant. So you can run a 25-year DC degradation profile, compare that to what your AC degradation would be, and you'll see that you can capture a lot more value out of your power plant that way by running this profile. So I'm going to save and close. And I'm going to run this prediction. Well, I'm going to see on my right side here, it looks like everything looks good here. I'm going to run this prediction. So most predictions will run in generally under 10 seconds. If for some reason there are many people running a prediction, oh, that was pretty quick. If there are many people running a prediction at the same time, your prediction will just be queued, and you can view your status of your prediction over here. So it looks like this one's ready. And you'll see on this results screen your high-level energy summary. So you'll see my plant net energy. I'll see all the different relevant loss factors, my spectral and my soiling monthly values. And then over here on the bottom, you'll see more plant level information. Earlier, I did choose P90 for my weather output, so now I can see what a P90 weather looks like. So this is obviously going to be a lower energy, and this tells me what a less risky value for my energy might be. Some other cool things about the output, you can do a block by block output. We just had one block in this prediction. But if you have multiple blocks in your prediction, you can see the different outputs there. That's really helpful for O&M purposes. The charts function is also extremely useful if you wanted to visually understand your plant performance. So you can plot your plant net energy, your plane of array installation, and see if there's anything funky going on with your prediction. This is also really helpful for looking at live plant data. If you have actual site weather data, you can import that into PlantPredict, showing that weather import that I showed earlier, and measure that against actual plant data. The last thing I'll show is the 12 by 24. This is something that's requested commonly by utilities for their RFPs, so this is something that we've added to PlantPredict as a feature as well. So let's say I wanted to export these results. I have a few options here. I can export as a PDF summary. I can export as a Excel summary. I can export inputs and assumptions. So if I want to export, what happens is I have to change to a read-only state. The reason we do this is to secure your data. So let's say you export a prediction and you email it to someone either internally or to a customer. You want that prediction to stay the same, because if you export something and then someone else goes in and changes that prediction, now that prediction has been compromised. So we have put this extra security feature into PlantPredict to make sure that your predictions stay uncompromised. So this Excel summary will take a few moments to download. Looks like we're getting some questions. I'll take this moment to answer a quick question. Does PlantPredict model sloping landscapes. That's actually a great question. I'm going to get to that right after I show this prediction summary. So I'm just going to show you what the Excel summary looks like real quick. It has a full 8760. So the nice thing about having an Excel in addition to a PDF summary is this is a nice clean output which shows the full 8760 as opposed to some softwares only have a PDF output, which can be cumbersome to deal with. So I'm going to move on and show you guys how the slope shading function in PlantPredict works. So to do this, I'm just going to go back to a prediction I created earlier. So this is just a traditional block by block prediction. And what we'll do is we'll go into the blocks and arrays. So a quick overview for those who may not be familiar. We've organized it into block, array, inverter, and DC field. So it's a top-down architecture. Block I described earlier. An array is just a collection of inverters. And then inverter, most of you should be familiar with, where you can go in and set your set point, set your power factor. And then your DC field is where you put in your module type, your row spacing, and all your module level loss factors. So let's say your company has different assumptions for module quality or mismatch. You can actually go into your Manage Accounts tab and change your default settings. So let's say I have a sloped terrain. So I can actually go in for each DC field and change my slope characteristics. So this is our 3D array visualization, which you can see here. So let's say I have a slope of 5 degrees at 180 azimuth. I can actually visualize that, and PlantPredict will model the shading losses. So I'm going to bump this up to 15 so we can actually see what this looks like. And PlantPredict will model the shading loss due to the sloped terrain. Let's say I have a plant with multiple slopes. I can actually go in. So this orange button does what's called a tree view. So I can see my full plant here. And let's say I have a 60 of this array type. Well, let's say I actually have 2 slopes on my site, for example. And I want to split those up into 30 and 30. So I can actually go into this array tab here, and then instead of 60, make this 30. And I don't have to recreate a whole new array. I can just clone this, and now I have 2 of this array type. So if we go back to my tree view, now you'll see I have 30 and 30. So I can go in to this DC field and have completely different parameters than the other one. So what's cool about PlantPredict is that you can do multiple complex plant architectures. I know a lot of plants will have different row spacings, even different inverters. And what PlantPredict allows you to do is have that iterability and make as complex of a plant as you want. So I'm going to, looks like I lost my slope shading. I'm going to go back real quick. So sorry about that. Let me go back and rerun the slope. So in the map builder, it doesn't currently have a topographical setting yet. So that's something we're looking to implement in the future. But there are many other layout specific softwares that can do that level of functionality. So again, we'll go down to the slope here, put in something that's more visible. This doesn't want to comply with me today. So well, we can go back to that later. But as you can see, PlantPredict does do the slope shading, and generally works better than this. The next thing we're going to jump to is the batch prediction. So this is the new feature that we just released last week, 2 weeks ago with the version 5 release. So that's the third option you'll see on the prediction builder. So I'm going to start a new prediction here and go to build a batch of variations. So I just got to ping. The reason that was a user error. I put too high of a degree on the slope, so I'm going to go back and do a lower slope later, and we'll go through that. So that's on me. That's not on PlantPredict. So we'll build a batch example. What this does, it takes a base prediction with some base constants. The constants being your weather, your inverter, and your module file, and then you can vary the other variables here, such as DC-AC ratio, ground coverage ratio, azimuth, and tilt angle. So I'm going to go in here and pick the SolarJS weather file. I'll add the same inverter as earlier, and we'll take the same module. But just to be clear, PlantPredict does have all different types of solar modules, not just for solar and thin film. So it is accurate for modeling polycrystalline, monocrystalline, and other module technologies. So I'm going to pick the same 75 megawatt DC plant I had earlier with my 1.25 ratio. And I'll pick GCR of 40. And then what I'll do is I'm going to vary my azimuth and my tilt angle. So what PlantPredict does now, based on these two variables, I pick a start and a stop value, and I pick an interval value, and it basically will run through every single iteration based on what I request. So I'm going to start at 160 azimuth, run all the way to 180 azimuth. Let's do fast. Let's do 200, and run in intervals of 5. I'm going to start at tilt angle of 15 to 35. And run that by 5 as well. So what that's telling me is that's 45 iterations. I have 350 total, so I could make this by increments of 1, but that's going to take a little bit longer than I want to use in this demo. So I'm just going to run this. This still runs fairly quickly because you do have those base variables, so it runs through the batch fairly quickly. You'll see the status bar here. Hopefully that comes up real quick. In the meantime, I can answer a question if Jacob has any. Actually, it looks like, yeah, we can see that my example is queued here. So I'm just going to go back and run. I'm going to show you a prediction that I've already run. So this is a full batch prediction with 350 runs. So this has a much higher resolution than the one I just ran. So you'll see the batch results have this cool 3D visualization. So you'll see I ran 350 predictions, and you can see them all visually represented right here. Looks like a pretty cool surface. And you can actually drag your mouse along the surface and look at each data point. So let's say I want to see 190 azimuth, 25 degree tilt, exactly what energy that is. And you can also scroll through the right side. In the future sprints, we're going to try to make this a colored heat map so it'll look even prettier than it does now. So you can sort this list by plant net energy. You can also sort just by prediction number or by the tilt or by the azimuth or the variables that you chose. So let's say prediction 157 at 180 azimuth and a 30-degree tilt angle. That's the one that I want to work off of now. I can clone this, and that will create a full energy prediction based off that one base. And then I can go in, I can revisit this, and I can change my loss factors, I can change my module type, things of that nature. So I'm going to save and close this one. So I'm going to go back and rerun the slope scenario for you guys. Looks like we have a couple of questions coming in. Can you run the bash node over several different weather files? Currently, that weather file is not a variation we can run just because that would take a really, really long time. Running with the DC, AC, and tilt angle and azimuth, you can actually iterate those very quickly, but iterating a weather file would take a really long time. So that's something we can consider for the future, and that's a great question. Another question is, can you model complex terrain, so non-constant slope? Currently, that's not a feature of PlantPredict, but we're definitely open to including that. If someone has a good complex terrain shading model that they've come across, or any papers that they've seen that model that, we'd be happy to work with you to incorporate that into PlantPredict. So I'm going to go back into my power plant builder and go back to my DC field and see if I can put a grade in. So I'll put a 10-degree slope here. And as you see, PlantPredict will tell me what that looks like on the visual array basis. And let's say, like I said earlier, I have multiple array types with different slopes. I can clone this, and then I can go into this clone, and I can change this one to maybe a 5-degree slope. And maybe that's going in a different direction. Maybe the trackers themselves are sloped. So you can't do a full complex terrain, but you can iterate pretty in a pretty detailed manner if you make different DC fields for each slope. So go back to this array view, tree view, and see, now I have 2 different DC fields with 2 different slopes. So I can save and close that. One quick thing I'll note is the quick edit function, which not a lot of people know about. If I have a complex plant, so this is only 2, but there's an infinite variability here, so you can make as complex of a power plant as you want. Let's say I want to change the tilt angle for all of these. This is something that might take an hour in other energy prediction software. In PlantPredict, we can do that in a second by changing the tilt angle using the update all function. Let's say there's a field here that you don't see. So let's say you wanted to change the ground coverage ratio. You're not exactly sure, based on the row spacing, you forget which mods you're using. You can put in GCR from this display field here, and then you can adjust your GCR here, or you can update all as well. So that's another great feature that a lot of you may not be aware of. So I'm going to save and close here, and I'm going to run my prediction. So with that, I'm going to open up to more questions. I'm going to see if we have any questions from the audience. Someone asked, can we import a PV array from AutoCAD in the shading field? That's currently not a feature. Again, the map builder is not intended to be like a fully robust layout tool. It's really intended to be more of an indicative understanding of your site capacity to run energy prediction. So that's currently not a feature. I think we're open to integrating that in the future, but that's not something we can do right now. Another question that was asked, how do you import a module or an inverter that is not already in the system? That's a really good question. So let's say there's an inverter that you have, for example, in PVSys, but you don't see it in PlantPredict. It's actually really easy to import that file. So what you can do is use the import inverter, and what that does is allows you to import directly from PVSys. So I'm going to open up PVSys. I do have it on my desktop for emergency purposes only. So I'm going to pull that up on the screen as well here. So what this does is you can go into your database and go to your inverter that you want to import. And then click on the import inverter and hit this button called Copy to Table. And then all you do is paste that here. And PlantPredict recognizes all these fields and will automatically create an inverter based on those fields. So you can look at this new asset and it looks exactly like the inverter that you just had in PVSys with the same efficiency curves, same temperature and elevation curve. And then you can save this. This will be saved as what's called as draft private, which means it's only visible to you. If you wanted to share it with your company, you could change the security to draft shared. And the PlantPredict team is the only entity is capable of making things global. So if you're an inverter provider or a module manufacturer and you want your products in PlantPredict, you want them to be global, which means they can be viewed by all users, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to do that for you. And you can do the same import with module. If you go to the module and import and you go to the same copy to table, it's the same exact functionality. It's just copy to table, but inside the module. Another question is around bankability. So that's a good question. PlantPredict actually recently just contracted over 350 megawatts of utility scale PV projects using PlantPredict as the basis for the EPC and O&M agreements. So if you go to our website, www.plantpredict.com, and go to the press and events page, you can see this here, and you can view the full press release here. You can see that Leidos was the IE that signed off on this transaction. It was several utility scale plants around the US. And so that will basically shows that PlantPredict is something that is accepted by the industry, accepted by IEs and banks. And so if you want to talk further about that, feel free to reach out to us and we can certainly discuss that with you and your company if you're considering contracting using PlantPredict. While I'm here, I'll just show you guys the release notes. So this is, if you want to see what's been released over the years and why something might be different, you can read up on the release notes. Another great thing about PlantPredict is that we have opened up the algorithms to the public. So every single equation that's being done in the background, you can see exactly what that is here. If you wanted to, you can recreate it and make your own software. Feel free to do so. And so this really gets rid of the black box nature of a lot of the software that's available in the industry today. Another question, if you change the version of PlantPredict, how do you, what happens if I write a contract on one version and you change it? There actually is version control in PlantPredict. So if you go to a prediction, inside the prediction builder, you can actually choose the version of PlantPredict. So right now we're on version 5. And if you go into, sorry, not the batch one. If you go into a regular block prediction or a map prediction, you can go here and change the prediction logic. So from version 3 to version 4 to version 5, there's been some minor changes in how the algorithm runs. Version 5 being not the most accurate, but if you wanted to see what version 4 and version 3 were like, or if you were to contract on a different version, we have those available for you. Another question on PlantPredict, is it free? Yes, PlantPredict is free. And if you want to get a license, you can go to our website again. Here, I'll show you one more time. If you go to www.plantpredict.com and go to contact, you can type in your company information and ask for an account, and we'll be happy to set you up with a free account. Let's see if there's any other questions. I'll talk really quickly about the compare and status change. So let's say you have a few predictions. You want to see which one has more energy. You can go to compare items. And this lets you choose different predictions and view them side by side. And you can actually export this. So let's say I want to compare these. I have these 3 different layouts. I want to see how the energies stack up, how the A760s stack up, especially if I have a utility project with different TOD factors. I can go through and compare them really easily like this. I can also export this compare into an Excel summary. And that's also extremely useful for things like financial modeling. When you're comparing different site layouts, site characteristics, you can see which one gives you the highest financial return. So I'll show you what that looks like right here. Another quick note, if you can also export the batch simulation. So if you have 350 simulations, you want to see what they all look like next to each other, you can do that as well. So we have just these 3 here with the full A760. And this is another really useful feature. Another question that came up is, do I have to download PlantPredict? No, you don't have to download PlantPredict. It's a web-based software, so you can use it anywhere that you have internet. What's cool about it is that you can actually share predictions on the cloud, so you don't have to export anything and send it to your coworker, or like if you're on vacation, you can change your prediction to draft shared. So let's say I'm leaving for a week or 2. I don't want to have to send any emails when I'm gone. I can go into this prediction, hit change status, and then change it from draft private to draft shared. So draft shared means you can still edit the prediction. That means other people in your company can also view and edit it. If you change it to anything that's analysis or above, that's a read-only state, which means that no one can change it. However, it's really easy to clone a prediction and start over. Let's see, these are all great questions. So yeah, someone asked, if the project is read-only status, what would we do if we want to keep working on it? Like I mentioned, you would, like this map example is read-only, I would just clone this, and it's the same exact prediction, but now it's just a different draft of it, and I can go in there and edit and make sure the title reflects what was changed. So if I change the row spacing or change the module, I can reflect that in the title here. Can First Solar steal my predictions? Absolutely not. So if you go to the resource library, you can see our terms of use. And within our terms of use, you'll see that PlantPredict and First Solar do not have access to any of your site-specific prediction information. All we have is the number of predictions that were run and how long it took to run them, so we can make sure that it's working as smoothly as possible. Someone asked about the limits on free weather data usage. So you have 10 free simulations from MediaNorm, SolarJS, and Clean Power Research. After the 10th simulation, you do have to purchase a license because those are all paid services. Someone asked, can you graph inverter clipping losses for higher DC-AC ratios? So you can't chart them per se, but you can chart your plant energy. So let's say you have a plant with a really high DC-AC ratio. You can look at your loss factors, and you can compare your loss factors in the compare items. So let's say I wanted to compare these 2 predictions. I wanted to see one of them has a higher DC-AC ratio. I can go into my compare and see what the loss factor for inverter clipping, inverter limitation was, which is right here. So hopefully that answers that question. Someone asked about independent engineering reviews. So again, if you go back to the resource library, this is where you would see the 4 different independent engineering firms that have written a technical review of the software. So Leidos, DNV, Black & Veatch, and ICF International have all independently reviewed the algorithms and the results of the software and found it to be acceptable for utility scale PV predictions. And as I mentioned earlier, we have contracted actual projects on this, so this is not just theoretically bankable. This is something that is being accepted by the industry. Someone asks, is it possible to add multiple parcels or boundaries simultaneously within the map tool? That's a great question. That's something that we're looking at adding in the future. Currently, it's just one polygon, so it's a pretty basic map view, but we're going to add some more detailed map functionality in the coming releases. But thank you for that question. Let's see, is there any other questions from the audience? Let's see if there's anything else I want to discuss. Like I said, if you have any questions or issues with the software, use this blue question mark, and this will let you know what's going on whatever screen you're on, and there are a few helpful videos. We are recording this session, and we'll post this on our press and events page and email this out after the fact. So if anyone wants to share this demonstration with any of their colleagues, feel free to do so. I'm going to wait another 30 seconds to let any questions come in, but if we don't get any questions, I think we can wrap it up. Someone asked, when will clean power research come back? That's a good question. I don't think I have an exact answer for that. They are working on, they had some timeout issues with their weather update. They updated their library, but it was taking several minutes to download a weather file, which we didn't think was acceptable to our users. So they're under maintenance until that download time can be down to an acceptable number. Let's see if we got one more question here. Oh, PlantPredict, does PlantPredict have an API? Okay, so that's a great question. PlantPredict does have an API product that you can connect to. If you have more questions, if your IT team would like to meet with us to connect via the API, we'd be happy to do so. So again, please email support@plantpredict.com, or again, use the contact us page on our website. And if you're interested in the API, we'd definitely love to talk to you about that. You can run, if you have a more advanced modeling background, you'd like to run predictions without having to use the user interface, you can run hundreds of simulations in the background. Let's see if there's, wait just a few more seconds to let any more questions, last minute questions come in. Oh, I guess one last thing I'll show is the weather compare function. So if you have multiple weather files in the same region, you want to compare them. PlantPredict does enable you to do that visually. So when you go into the weather view, you can see, looks like another question, sorry. Does First Solar module spectral correction get done automatically? Yes, so First Solar spectral is default to the 2-parameter model, and for crystalline silicon, it's default to no spectral correction. So it looks like we have our predictions here. If I want to compare a couple weather files, I can do that here. I can pick these 2 files here and hit ready to compare. I'm sure these are nowhere near each other, but you can look at this chart view, which is really helpful. I can actually show them. Well, let's go to weather files that are actually near each other. I'll answer another question while this loads. Can you import a horizon scene from measurement equipment like SunEye? I don't believe that's currently a feature. If that's something that is commonly requested, we can definitely look into integrating that. But currently the horizon scene just uses your azimuth and tilt angle, which is, I'm fairly sure, the same way that PVSys does horizon scenes. Let's see if this screen is a little faster. Oh, so we'll go to the map view here. And I'll go to a site here, and let's say I have a few weather files in the same region. I want to compare them. I would go to compare items. Click, we can do up to 6 weather files side by side. And what this does is it shows me both the high-level parameters, but also you can plot the weather file on top of the clear sky model to see if these weather files make sense based on the Latin law. So this is another really helpful feature. One last question I see, how do I check or know if the weather file has humidity in it? You basically you can see, if you go into the weather file itself, you can see whether it has relative humidity or p-watt. And those two things would lead to spectral correction. So we have a couple more questions. We have 4 more minutes, so I'll try to answer as many as I can. Can you comment on IAM losses? So yeah, we default to the tabular IAM for First Solar because most of our module files have a built-in IAM profile. For anything that does not have an IAM profile, what that would default to is the ASHRAE. Let's go look for the correction. It would default to the ASHRAE IAM model that uses the B0 parameter, assuming there's no built-in IAM profile into the module file. That's a great question. One last thing I'll show, if you are an account administrator, you can go to your Manage Accounts tab, and this will show you all of your users where you can add and remove. You can also go to Edit your default settings, and you can edit your soiling, your loss factors, your transformer voltage. You know, different countries have different transformer voltages. Also your DC field level losses, so your wiring, DC health, tracker actuator load. If you're using something that's self-powered like Nextracker, you can turn that to 0. You can also default your simulation settings here. So if you guys use Hay instead of Perez, you can change that in all the different simulation settings. The last thing would be your weather vendors. You can add your API key here, and that will enable you to download unlimited weather, assuming you've paid for it. So that's all our time today. Thank you very much. If there's any questions we didn't get to, we'll compile them and try to answer them in an email format. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at support@plantpredict.com. And thanks for joining. Until next time.